time to wake up is now. So many have been trying to get to the truth. Out to you groups like Anonymous, 911truth.org, and wearechange.org, and Infowars.com. And now you are here at another radio, that's the Minutemen Radio, with the Mark Floyd broadcast, a place where truth and freedom ring.
Hello, citizens of the world. We are Anonymous.
Anonymous hacked a San Antonio, Texas, school district's website over the weekend. The goal of the attack was to protest the district's requirement that students at 2 schools wear tracking ID badges that log their whereabouts electronically. Anonymous disabled the website because the school district is stripping away the privacy of students in your school. The school district's website was not working as of Sunday. The hacker described himself as 16 years of age in an email and said he hacked into the district's website on Saturday. A spokesperson for the school district, Pascual Gonzalez, said he has not yet been able to determine that the website was hacked. The identification cards are part of a pilot program. Beginning this fall, all students at John Jay High School and Anson Jones Middle School have been required to wear or carry IDs embedded with individual microchips at all times while on school grounds. Electronic readers installed in the school's ceiling panels then track every student's location at school at all times. If the schools can prove that students are, in fact, on campus, they receive more state funding. The school district, Northside Independent School District, is the 4th largest in Texas. It comprises more than 100 schools with over 97,000 students. The school district could eventually use the ID tracking system program at all of its campuses.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Mark Floyd broadcast. We're talking about, as you can see with Anonymous, they hacked the site because of what the illegal chips that these guys are doing, and it's really, really bad. Okay? And if that's not really bad enough, okay, what's really getting bad enough is that you and I, that's right, you and I, law-abiding citizens, the people that work, we're the ones that are assumed to be terrorists. They think we're all terrorists, as you can see in this next story right now.
And now the plain truth. As you've seen on our show, the government at times tells you lies. The deception is historic and continuous. The government needs to be exposed because it cannot be trusted to expose itself.
All right, folks, there is a lot going on right now. Decisions being made that are unprecedented and will have an overreaching impact on what it means to live in the United States of America.
I am not somebody who believes that the president has the authority to do whatever he wants or whatever she wants, whenever they want, just under the guise of counterterrorism.
The Obama administration telling federal judges in New Orleans yesterday that warrantless tracking of mobile devices is perfectly legal.
Just signed into law by the president, H.R. 347 gives federal agents sweeping powers to arrest and bring felony charges against citizens engaged in protests where the Secret Service is present.
The U.S. is funneling money into tracking systems that are threatening to make the very concept of privacy a thing of the past.
Technology that uses physiological and behavioral recognition to identify people.
Somebody can press a button and determine everywhere I've been, everything I've done, everyone I've been with.
Riot can map and analyze your locations, ultimately building a profile of your activities and movements. Later in the process, your relationships are analyzed, and in the end, you're assigned a risk level.
A police force able to figure out what criminals are going to do in advance?
FAST stands for Future Attribute Screening Technology. Future attributes. Not the attributes you have now, the attributes you're going to have and will be punished for later.
If you use a cell, a computer, or walk outside, the FBI now considers you a terrorist suspect with no right to privacy.
About $11.3 million to monitor for criticism, to monitor for dissent.
For a system to monitor blogs, message boards, and social media sites like Twitter, Facebook.
Will allow the government to keep data on anybody who uses any sort of news or media outlet to share, report, or stay informed. It gives the military the power to indefinitely detain American citizens suspected, just suspected, not convicted, of some sort of involvement or affiliation with terrorism.
As much as we all want the country to be safe, want the authorities to be on top of it, are we really willing to have the government consider each and every one of us a terrorist? Because you see, that's essentially what's happening.
The Department of Homeland Security buying ammunition, now looking to purchase another 21 million rounds of ammunition. This in addition, of course, to the 1.6 billion rounds that Homeland Security has bought in just the past 10 months. Now, to put all of this in perspective, the military used approximately 70 million rounds each year of the Iraq War. 70 million rounds in a war.
The government does not need clear evidence to justify a deadly attack.
They can execute you, and we just had another ruling saying, well, even though it clearly seems to violate the Constitution, yep, that's what we're going to continue to do. Welcome to Obama's America, which seems startlingly similar to the Bush America.
The federal government has spent $34 billion on militarizing our local police enforcement.
The police forces in the United States have been increasingly weaponized with similar equipment to that of the U.S. military.
Several U.S. citizens have already been assassinated. Here, Black Hawks fly low on downtown Miami, strafing highways with machine gun fire in what authorities call a practice run.
The Constitution guarantees due process. It does not guarantee judicial process.
Because the main threat is you.
Want to know what's going on? Want to get the inside scoop? Minutemen Radio, the Mark Fluid broadcast, will give you the stories that corporate media mongers will not tell you. Want the truth? Then go to fluidnews.webs.com. That's fluidnews.webs.com. Now you can get good quality made gifts from true veterans. No more will you have to keep shelling out your money to the fat corporate mongers that all they do is can keep you down. The globalists want you to spend all your hard-earned money, but why would you? When you can go to the top Patriot stores around, and one of them are RFIDShopWorld.webs.com, a complete line of military local gifts designed by 100% American. Stop catering to the globalists, and stop catering to a crisis. Make a difference today. Go to RFIDShopWorld.webs.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, now you can see that there's really a lot of nonsensical that this government is doing. But in this next story right now we're talking about something that is really serious. NSG officer is being monitored for probe. You got to hear it to believe it, but that's exactly what's happening. Let's go to the story.
This is the big news that we are breaking at noon, 24 hours after a Home Ministry staffer came under the radar for passing on sensitive information. There are more leads coming in. Now, a senior NSG officer has come under the probe for speaking to an anonymous Pakistani caller. That caller wanted operational details of the post-Hyderabad blast probe. The officer facing the probe is a major rank armyman. He's on deputation to the NSG. NSG teams, as we know, were sent to Hyderabad for post-blast site and explosives analysis. Government has asked the officer to explain why he took an unidentified call from Pakistan. The Home Ministry and the Intelligence Bureau are investigating this matter and are now claiming that no sensitive information was shared. Investigators say the identity of the caller from Pakistan is yet to be established. Now, this is coming just a day after a Home Ministry section officer was put under the scanner as well for allegedly passing on information to Pakistan. So on charges of spying, he was under the scanner as well. And now comes information that a senior level officer within the National Security Guards, that's the elite NSG force probing the Hyderabad blast, is also under the scanner. He is a major rank army man who's on deputation to the NSG. Joining us for more is CNN IBN's Arunima. What else do we know about this matter, Arunima? Because it's a very serious charge. Here is an NSG officer who's probing the Hyderabad blast, and he's taken a call from Pakistan asking for details of those blasts.
Well, the NSG is not taking this matter very seriously. The DG of NSG said that as far as he is concerned, this was only a breach of the standard operating procedure, because this army major on deputation to NSG was in the control room when the Hyderabad blast incident happened, and he got a call. DG NSG says that the caller is still unidentified. They don't know who the caller was, but he apparently said that he was from military intelligence, which is a wing of intelligence of Indian Army, and this major then gave him information about how many units of NSG were travelling to Hyderabad. NSG says that no serious information was compromised, but it nevertheless has instituted an inquiry for breach of protocol and for breach of standard operating procedure.
All right, just a clarification here. This NSG officer shared some information with the caller who called from Pakistan?
Well, NSG says that the only information that was shared was that the number of units that were travelling to Hyderabad immediately after the blast happened. No other sensitive information, anything to do with the probe, was not leaked, because this was minutes after the blast had happened. The NSG team was still flying along with NIA to Hyderabad. That is when this call came. So NSG says that as far as they are concerned, they don't think anything sensitive was leaked. But nevertheless, because it is suspected that the caller was from Pakistan, and because a breach of the standard operating procedure was done, whereby somebody, a senior officer of NSG, without identifying the caller, shared any information, therefore an inquiry has been instituted.
Where did this call come? This was not a call that came to him personally. It must have come to the NSG operating center.
He was in the control room at that point when the call came. According to preliminary information available with the Intelligence Bureau, the caller was based in Pakistan. The suspicion is that he could be calling on behalf of any spying agency in Pakistan, but that is a matter of investigation still. It has not yet been ascertained as to what really was the intention of the caller and who he was, but it was quite sensitive because this had happened minutes after the Hyderabad blast. In the past, we have seen Indian Mujahideen operatives and other terrorist operations being carried out in India, getting support from Pakistan.
All right, Arunima,
and therefore,
thanks for those details. At the moment,
all right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. All right, now this is just getting more and more bizarre and more bizarre. But these are information that you need in order to make the stand that you're going to make. Okay? In this next story right now, you're going to see how the kids are being molded, constructed, they're being brainwashed to just be lemmings, to be no thinking, nothing. Not to have the freedom our kids had, or we had. We're talking about a mindless society is what they're trying to create. And listen to this story, and this is from prisonplanet.com, Infowars.com, and it's another one of our places we get, and we search and see what's going on, and we can pick the stories that we have the most evidence. But you really have to hear the story. Let's go to it.
This hour, we're going to be joined by Lenore Skenazy from Free Range Kids, talking about all the ways that the schools and the media at large are conditioning our children to accept, I would say almost being infantilized, being turned into the consumptive units, I guess, consumption units here, that do nothing but buy, spend, consume, and obey. And that conditioning begins very early on in the schools. No other place are you going to find, that I'm aware of, where you have to ask the permission of an authority figure to even exercise your own bodily functions. You know, excuse me, can I use the bathroom? Right. Well, that's some powerful conditioning, folks, believe me. And it goes far beyond that. We'll be joined by Lenore Skenazy in just a couple of minutes. She's going to be telling us about how we've turned our kids into a bunch of helpless mambies.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
All right, well, joining me this hour to talk about how we're infantilizing children and actually turning them into a bunch of mambies who do not have the ability to even find their way out of a paper bag, much less grow up into fully competent, mature, independent adults. My guest this hour, Lenore Skenazy. She is the author of the book and the blog, Free Range Kids. She's also the host of the Discovery TLC International television program called The World's Worst Mom. That is tongue-in-cheek there. She's actually a terrific mom. Lenore Skenazy is a New York City columnist turned reality TV show host, and she actually first gained notoriety or prominence or fame, if you would, by letting her 9-year-old son take the subway alone in New York. Yikes. All right. Lenore Skenazy, hello and welcome to the show.
Oh, Catherine, thank you so much.
Great to have you on. So I want to talk, I know your story, letting your 9-year-old take the subway has a lot of people, shuddering. How could you allow a 9-year-old to actually go on the subway? I can tell you, though, after sort of engaging your message, which initially was really shocking to me, but after really sitting with it for the last couple of months, I see the world in a whole new way. And I actually see the way that kids nowadays are not allowed to do anything, not allowed to go to the bathroom, not allowed. At Burger King, I see kids who want to go up and get a straw. We're talking like a 10-foot walk to the...
be snatched. No, don't do it. Don't, for God's sake. I want to see you live till you're a grown-up. Don't get the straw.
It's crazy. It really is crazy. So let me... I want to get into some specific stories that have been going on lately, but before we do that, I just want to ask your opinion about all of this overprotective helicopter parenting. What is it, and how did we get started doing this kind of crazy, treating kids like they were completely incompetent? Where did they come from?
It's so interesting, isn't it? We think we're doing it out of, we actually are doing it out of love, but somehow it comes across like, I don't trust you to do anything. Just think about the words of when we take our kids to school today. The fact is that we do take them to school today. 10% of kids, 11 actually, still walk to school. And if you contrast that to like when we were growing up, it was always, there was arrival, the bell rang, and then there was dismissal. Yay, the other bell rang. And now it's drop off and pick up. Those are the two different times of the day. And just inherent in that word change is the way we're thinking of kids. They used to be able to get themselves to school. The kids themselves used to be the crossing guards. I had a 6th grade crossing guard when I was in 1st grade. And I married him, but that's another story. And nowadays it's drop off and pick up as if we don't think kids can do it, as if we think they're either too incompetent, too dreamy, or, of course, too endangered to do anything on their own. Whenever I suggest that kids are, they're happier when they go and they play outside and they meet up with a friend and they shoot some hoops or they make a hopscotch, if anybody still knows how to make hopscotch, grid on the ground. Everybody says, oh, but that's crazy. And it's like, since when is that crazy? Crime is down since the 70s, 80s, and 90s when most of today's parents were growing up. And yet we act as if it's, Nazi Germany out there, and if the kids go out there, they're going to be snatched. And I just have to say that the latest piece today on my blog is a father writing to me asking for advice, which I wish I had some advice to give him. He let his 6-year-old walk around. He taught her how to walk around the neighborhood, how to cross the street safely. They're in some quiet little suburb. And she was doing just that. She walked to the store the other day, and the cops not only picked her up, they didn't even tell the dad that they had her. The dad went looking for her when she didn't come home, went to the store, that he'd sent her to. The storekeeper said, oh, you know what? She was taken by the cops. So he went to the police station, and there was his daughter behind bulletproof glass, and he was not allowed to talk to her or take her home for 20 minutes while the cops decided whether, they called Child Protective Services, and Child Protective Services reluctantly said, okay, he's allowed to take her back home. But now he's being investigated by Child Protective Services, all because he trusted his 6-year-old to have a little bit of a life, and you're not allowed to do that anymore.
Well, so let me ask you, Lenore, what are the laws on that? At what age? Like, where is the cutoff? Not only legally, but just in terms of common sense. At what age can a kid, or do the cops, for example, consider a kid competent to just walk down the street?
Oh, well, those are two questions. At what age is a kid competent, and at what age do cops consider a kid competent? I don't even think it's just cops. I think it's a whole generation of adults that has forgotten how much freedom they had at age 6. I have a book, somewhere on my extremely messy desk that was put out in the 80s, and it was called Your 6-Year-Old. And it just gave a list of, things that a kid in first grade should be able to do. They should be able to recognize colors and make some shapes and draw in the lines. And says they should be able to go, 4 to 8 blocks around the neighborhood and go visit a friend and go play in the park. And this was normal and not exceptionally dangerous or weird or superstar behavior in the 80s. It was just normal. And the fact is that now, the 6-year-old gets picked up. It's, you're asking what is the age that kids can do things. I'd say at 6, they are definitely capable, like I was and like you probably were, of going down the street, knocking on a neighbor's door and saying, let's play. But there is no actual cutoff date for when you're allowed to start being alone or doing something on your own. Only 2 states have an age even that is officially you're allowed to stay home alone. And
what are those, by the way, Lenore?
One of them is, I think it's Maryland is age 8, and Illinois has some really high age, and I can't remember if it's 12, 13, or 14.
That doesn't surprise me, being Illinois. That's
I'm
one
from
of the
Illinois to begin with. But those are also, there's always wiggle room on those, too. It's like if you're keeping your child in an endangered spot, if there's drug paraphernalia around and there's no food in the kitchen and there's a fire, it's different. The authorities get to interpret whether they found what you're doing dangerous or negligent or not. And that's the crux of the problem, because to me, a 6-year-old who has been trained by her parents, the dad who wrote to me said, we've taught her all about crossing the street, and we've watched her, and we've, gradually let her go, longer distances after we've been, certain that she is capable. And to me, that sounds like very responsible parents. But obviously, the cops are picking this kid up and not letting the dad talk to her because they think of him as an irresponsible parent. So if you have if the authorities have been sort of brainwashed to the idea that, no child is ever safe, no child is ever competent, every child needs 24/7 supervision or they are in danger, then it becomes, me saying kids are very competent, and let's look back in history, and what about Huck Finn, and what about, like you were talking, Little House on the Prairie, and them saying, what about that child who was kidnapped in 1987 from a bus stop, and me saying, we can always go to the worst-case scenario, but that can't be our benchmark for every decision.
Well, now, for all the parents out there listening going, oh, my gosh, don't you know kids are being snatched off the street left and right? What are you talking about? And I'm sure there's a lot of parents out there with that exact response to this, because I have to admit, the first time I heard you speak, I had the same response. What? No, because it's exactly opposite of what we've been told. Give us some statistics. How likely is it that a 6-year-old walking down the street is going to be kidnapped?
Well, here's one of my favorite statistics. First of all, the idea that we can have absolute perfect safety, which has become the goal, and I don't mind it being the goal, but it's elusive. It will never happen no matter what. Here in New York, we just had a tragic case yesterday where a whole family was killed by a hit and run. You can never predict everything that's going to happen. But in terms of the big fear, which is some stranger on the street snatching your kid, this is such a rare crime that if you actually wanted it, for some reason, if you wanted to know, how long would you have to keep your child outside unattended for that horrible scenario to be likely to happen, for them to be picked up, kidnapped by a stranger? I don't know if I've asked you this one before. If I have, then you'll know the answer. But how long do you think you would have to keep a kid outside for that to be likely to happen? It's sort of like asking, how many lottery tickets would you have to buy to be likely to win the lottery?
I'm going to give the guests, or the listeners, this break to think that over.
Okay, great.
We're coming up in a break.
Alex Jones here with a message that could revolutionize health in this country. Going back about a year and a half ago, I began to learn about the incredible health effects of longevity products. Aaron Dykes lost 92 pounds. We're going to show you some before and afters. Aaron, break down what happened, your story.
I've worked really hard with diet and exercise to try to lose weight, but I just didn't get the results. It just didn't happen. Then I saw what you were doing with InfoWarsTeam.com. I wasn't even trying to lose weight, but I got it because I wanted to feel better energy. I wanted that nutrition. Didn't even understand how that could kickstart my own weight loss goals. But the products did that for me. I found myself suddenly losing weight, more energetic, wanting to exercise, wanting to eat the right foods.
And they don't even advertise it as weight loss. I want to challenge our radio listeners to go to InfoWarsTeam.com. Sign up as a distributor and get wholesale pricing discounts at InfoWarsTeam.com.
All right, let's get back to the question that's been burning in everyone's minds. Lenore, your question was if you...
Now you can get good quality made gifts from true veterans. No more will you have to keep shelling out your money to the fat corporate mongers that all they do is can keep you down. The globalists want you to spend all your hard-earned money, but why would you when you can go to the top Patriot stores around, and one of them are RFIDShopWorld.webs.com, a complete line of military local gifts designed by 100% American. Stop catering to the globalists and stop catering to a crisis. Make a difference today. Go to RFIDShopWorld.webs.com.
All right, let's get back to the question that's been burning in everyone's minds. Lenore, your question was if you had a 6-year-old walking in the street, how long would it take for that 6-year-old to be abducted or kidnapped by someone with a bad intent? And I guess the average answer would be, I don't know, 3-4 hours, 6-7 hours? What is the answer?
Think higher. And it's how long would they have to be out there to be statistically likely to be kidnapped? And the answer is 750,000 years.
How do you get that? 750,000 years that a kid would have to be?
As a bad numbers person, I had Warwick Cairns do the number crunching for me, looking at the FBI statistics on kidnapping in America and also how many kids there are. And I don't know, he put it through some kind of computer program, and that's the number he came up with. I use it because when I talk about how rare these crimes are, they never seem rare because our minds work a lot like Google, in that if you ask yourself, gee, can my kid walk to the bus stop? And your mind is like shuffling, basically entering, bus stop child safety. Up comes the cases that we've heard about in the news, some of them 35 years old, like the case of Eitan Pates here in New York City, or some of them, 20-something years old, like J.C. Dugard, who was taken from a bus stop in California and kept in captivity. Those come up because they are so rare. They made the news. They shocked us. They saddened us, and we saw their pictures for years, sometimes for decades. And they're easy to find in our brains. What we can't find in our brains is the picture of the tens of millions, hundreds of millions, perhaps, of children who have gone to school in the years who have not been kidnapped, who walked there just like you and me as kids, and made it through safe and sound, which is such a vast majority that it's almost statistically not there. The kids who are hurt, and so but because we see the J.C. Dugards and the Elizabeth Smarts in our mind at the top of that Google search, just like a Google search, we think it's the most relevant to our lives, even though it's actually the least relevant. So that's why I tried to flip it with let's look at how unlikely it is that your child will be hurt.
Well, and I think that's the downside of the news cycle because, I've had news before that I wanted to break with the mainstream media, and I have contacts within the media for a lot of the spy chips and RFID stuff that I've been working on. And they always say, unless there's a victim, I don't care how evil or terrible the thing is you've discovered, we need a victim. We've got to put a face on the screen. We've got to have somebody that will engender all those emotions on the part of the viewers.
That actually was the rule at my, I used to work at the New York Daily News, the big tabloid here, Superman's paper, for 14 years. And if you didn't have a picture of a person, you couldn't run the story on our page.
Yeah, there you go, because they need a victim, exactly. And so for that reason, if they get a victim, they milk it for everything it's worth. All right, my guest is Lenore Skenazy. FreeRangeKids.com is her blog. I'm your host, Dr. Catherine Albrecht, filling in for Alex Jones. Stay tuned. Catherine Albrecht filling in for Alex Jones. That's Dr. Catherine Albrecht. My website, kmashow.com. Yeah, we're going to open up the phone lines here in just a moment, 1-800-259-9231. Before we do that, I've got a question for my guest, Lenore Skenazy. And the reason why I think this topic is so critically important for people who love liberty in this country is because of what it does to children when you don't allow them to do a single darn thing by themselves. And I'm talking not even pick up a butter knife to spread the butter on the bread. At what point do these kids ever become independent, functional adults, or do they always remain infantilized, looking for some authority figure to give them permission to breathe?
That is a big question. I don't know the answer, but I can tell you a couple of things that I do hear that are disturbing. One is that until recently, like until the mid-'90s, when kids went to college and they felt they needed some psychological help and they went to the counseling services, the number one reason they went for was a breakup. You know, their boyfriend or their girlfriend dumped them and they were feeling terrible. But what switched then and what has remained the case since then is now they're going because they are overwhelmed by anxiety. And I think they're overwhelmed because they are not used to coping on their own. And in terms of Alex Jones's message and yours, what worries me about that is if you can't cope on your own, who do you turn to? You know, is there supposed to be always somebody telling you exactly what to do and how to do it? Well, if you're not used to thinking on your own, you know, perhaps you start seeking that. And I just wanted to tell you one other disturbing trend that I heard from the idea that kids just aren't doing things on their own. They're not playing. They're not organizing their own games. They're not building the treehouse. The treehouse is built for them, and then somebody stands underneath and makes sure that nobody falls. Well, NASA started realizing that they were having a problem because as the Apollo 13 generation was retiring and they needed to replace the guys who basically sent us to the moon, they were getting these brilliant graduates of MIT and Caltech, and they could do anything, absolutely anything, when it came to a computer program or a simulation of something in the real world. But when it was the real world, when you needed to figure out how are we going to get these guys back from the moon with some duct tape and a carton of Tang, they were stumped because they had done so little on their own. Everything had been programmed. Everything was perfect. Everything was intellectually stimulating. But there was no leadership and no thinking on their feet. And so NASA and the Jet Propulsion Labs, from what I hear, have started, when they interview prospective employees, have started to ask them, how did you spend your childhood? Did you spend some time on your own? Did you tinker? Did you make anything on your own? Did you blow up something in the basement? Because that's what we actually need.
Oh, yeah, I did that on SimCity. That's right. I built a whole city through my computer interface.
Good, yeah. So I'll build a SimCity way to get those guys home.
No, it's really the case. And, I've had some guests on my show who've talked about the real problem for employers trying to find employees, and not just NASA, but just across the board, people who not only are able to get the job done, but are willing to get the job done. And there's a second piece, because they were saying, you ask people, you'll have these 18, 19-year-old interns, and you'll say, hey, can you go make a cup of coffee? Or can you make a couple of photocopies? And they'll say, heck no, I didn't go to college to be doing that kind of job. And so you've also got the sense of entitlement right along with the incompetence. So it's like
it's a great combination.
Oh, my gosh. So I don't know what's going to happen as we go forward. And also this notion that, kids are turning to their parents, Mommy, can I go get a straw? And Mommy says, well, as long as I'm watching very closely. And at some point, that's going to be the person who's going to say, excuse me, Obamacare, can I please take this aspirin? It just creates this total sense on the part of the kids that they're not competent.
The just sort of like, tell me what to do, I'm a vessel. Like we're talking about with the pick-off and drop-off. It's, bring me someplace, tell me what to do, and then bring me home. One thing I heard that was very interesting was an article by an HR person. I think she was the head of HR at IBM, but I could be wrong, saying that she preferred to hire the children of immigrants, preferably immigrants who didn't speak English, because that meant that the kids were not having their parents interfering for them all the time and arguing with the teacher and doing their homework. If you're the child of somebody who doesn't speak the language, you have to assert yourself and become almost the grown-up in those situations, and she's impressed by them because they've made it on their own already. They've already succeeded by the time they've graduated college, as opposed to the mother calling up the professor and saying, B minus, my son knows Milton like nobody knows Milton.
Yeah. You're getting that on the college level, too. You've got parents calling up college professors complaining about the grades, and parents wanting to go with their kids for college application interviews. If I were a kid, I would have been mortified. I actually moved out of my home at age 15. I went down to Mexico and lived on my own in a foreign country where they didn't even speak English. And, I look at what a 15-year-old...
If I was a lady from IBM, I'd hire you.
There you go. And that probably would be a good move because I wound up, running my own business when I came back and, starting college at 15 and just independently. I couldn't become a grown-up fast enough. I wanted all those skills and abilities. I wanted the ability to maneuver on my own in the world and be independent. And yet I look at today's kids.
The human drive is to become a grown-up until you've taken it out of kids by never letting them. I mean, say you drive a kid every day to school, and then you drive them to their soccer game, and then somebody, the coach tells you when it's going to start and makes the teams, and now we're playing, and now you got to eat the organic grapes, and now your parents can drive you home. I mean, you really don't have much of a life, and it's we think that we're, helping our children because we're giving them this great opportunity. They're on travel soccer, and we're not making them walk because it's cold or it's rainy, and actually what we've done is taken out that essential element of childhood, which is the drive to grow up and the joy that you get out of, like, I got myself home. I got lost and I got myself home. Those are great moments, not terrible.
Yeah, and we really do try to stamp them out of kids. All right, my guest this hour, Lenore Skenazy. Her absolutely just riveting blog is at freerangekids.com. I encourage you to check it out. She's got stories on there of kids who've been suspended for school for doing things like making a sheet of paper in the shape of an L because that shape L might look like a gun. What was this recent one you had on there about the cake?
Yeah, no, the most recent case of this, and they do seem to be coming about one every 2 weeks. This is a boy, at the beginning of the day, he had some kind of pastry. It sounds like maybe a Pop-Tart. And he chewed it into, he was trying to make it into, he says, the shape of a mountain, but the teacher thought it looked more like a gun. And therefore, because of this deadly pastry, he was suspended because we've absolutely lost our minds when it comes to these zero-tolerance laws. And we can't tell the difference between a piece of paper shaped like a gun, a piece of pastry shaped like a gun, a Lego sculpture shaped like a gun. And kids are getting suspended for all of these. For a Hello Kitty gun, which shoots bubbles, a child was recently suspended. Because we just go immediately to, oh, my God, what if this was real? I mean, we just love thinking of our children in constant danger and catastrophizing even the simplest, nicest parts of their day, like eating a pastry or playing with their friends. One kid was suspended because he was playing with another friend. He was playing, I'm going to save the world. And to save the world, he threw a pretend grenade, which is a totally imaginary thing, like I'm going to do now. And that's what he got suspended for because the teacher could not see the difference between playing and war and imagination and an actual grenade that would blow up the school.
And what is this conditioning for, though? I fly all the time, and I'm standing in the TSA line, and you know that if I did what you had just done right now in the air, that I would be hauled off in handcuffs and interrogated under a swinging light bulb for 24 hours. And, it's not just in the schools, it's everywhere. And I think it's really conditioning for don't even think a thought.
It's absolutely conditioning to what I call, it's like learned obtuseness. It's like, the chances that somebody's saying, wow, I'm really going to bomb this plane is, bored and surly from waiting in the line versus a terrorist and say it's a grandmother in a wheelchair and you're still supposed to treat this like an absolute threat. That's like willing yourself not to think like a normal human being and become an obtuse idiot, which is what you'd have to be to suspend a kid who's pretend playing war on the playground, which children have done since the beginning of time. I mean, it really is using no judgment whatsoever.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to the phone lines, 1-800-259-9231. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. My guest, Lenore Skenazy, is online at freerangekids.com. And let's see, we got Mike listening in California. Hi, Mike. You're on with Lenore Skenazy. Go ahead.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Doctor.
There we go. We hear you. Go ahead.
I'm in Red Bluff, California. We just had a girl kidnapped and murdered on her way home from school.
Oh, it's horrifying.
This week, the perpetrator said he went crazy on drugs. We had one of the interstate, international kidnap, murder, eat children arrested less than a year ago in Anderson, California, right up the street.
That's horrifying.
My own child was trafficked. The FBI is covering this up. Don't use their statistics. I personally know of an interstate ring. There's a cancer of corruption inside the FBI. And Alex is right. Our children are being trafficked. Don't let your children out there to be victimized.
Here's what I would say. I would say definitely have your kids, especially in a neighborhood where there's been a tragedy and perhaps the person hasn't been found, definitely travel with a buddy. That's obviously much safer. And what I always tell parents is to tell their children, not that you can't talk to strangers because, if, God forbid, something bad is happening, you want the child to feel very free to knock on somebody else's door or to run across the street to the guy who's raking his leaves and say, I'm going to stand next to you. I don't like the guy in the van that's passing by. So you can always talk to strangers, but never, ever go off with strangers. And don't feel bad if you're making a stink or screaming or running. Don't feel embarrassed. Don't feel like you have to be a good girl. Don't go off with strangers. You can talk to strangers, but don't go off with strangers.
Well, and let me address this because I think Mike is hitting on something pretty important, which is that there are international rings that do traffic in children. Even the mainstream media acknowledges this. So we know that kind of thing does happen. I would say for parents in a community like that, I probably would not let a 6-year-old walk down the street in today's day and age. Lenore, sorry, I probably wouldn't. But, I see 12-year-olds who can't even go to the bathroom by themselves. 12-year-olds, you were telling me the story of a 12-year-old boy whose mother, because his mother didn't want to let him actually go to the bathroom. He's 12 years old. So, at what point, and I would ask this of Mike, at what point do kids earn the right to be able to walk to the street or go to the bathroom? Where does that cutoff happen? Is it at 21? When can they walk down the street?
Is Mike still there?
Well, yes, in this area, this is massive corruption. It's worse than Boston. You can Google up FBI ruling Bulger, B-U-L-G-E-R, Whitey Bulger, and understand the FBI has been, a cancer inside the FBI has been allowing this to continue, including an interstate trafficking ring.
All right. Well, let me. Thanks for the call, Mike. Let me just jump in with a couple of thoughts here. First of all, anytime the word Google comes up, I have to correct it and say around here we start page it because we're giving billions of dollars of free advertising to Google every time we say to Google something, and we use Start Page, the private search engine here. But the other thing I want to say, Lenore, let's say somebody really just doesn't feel safe with their kids walking down the street alone. That's not really what this is about because what it's really about is letting a kid, use a sharp knife in the kitchen, letting a kid use a hammer and nails in their own backyard to build a treehouse. Things that nowadays parents are not letting their kids do anything.
There are parents who won't let their children cut a sandwich. There are parents who won't let children, play in the backyard. What we've started to do is think of children as in danger by everything. And just like we were talking about with the TSA sees danger in every passenger, I feel like we as parents are encouraged to think, oh, my God, this cup has plastic, and plastic could hurt my child. Oh, my God, this drop-side crib. I mean, we just recalled all the drop-side cribs because it's sad. Once in a while, somebody dies in them. But does that mean that the crib is inherently dangerous? If 1 in 8 million children dies in a crib, we started saying that this means that we can't have that on the market anymore. So the crib is dangerous, the cup is dangerous, the knife is dangerous, and outside is dangerous because there's sun, and the sun could give you cancer. I mean, we don't think of anything as natural or wholesome for our kids anymore, and we're
right. And I think it's harming the parents as well. All right, let me go to New York. I want to get a woman's opinion on this. Catherine is holding on the line in New York. Catherine, you're on with Lenore Skenazy. Go ahead.
Oh, Catherine.
I actually hello?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Oh, hi. Catherine, I was actually able to sit in on your talk up at the Liberty Forum in New Hampshire, and I want to thank you for that. And I just wanted to say that I grew up the complete opposite of what you're describing here. I mean, unfortunately, when I was growing up, I was like kind of running away because my home life was, you know, a bit stressful to say the least. There was like some domestic violence and divorce, and I was, you know, pushed out, forced to kind of grow up too fast. And I think, I mean, of course, there's a balance, you know, not letting kids grow up enough and pushing them. And then, you know, even me, I wanted to kind of grow up fast, but it doesn't work because everything has to be, you know, done in, you know, nature's process. And growing up too fast and not having people to rely on and lean on sufficiently enough actually prevents you from ending up independent and healthy also.
That's a great point. I don't think anybody's, you know, recommending that kids just be shoved out onto the street at age 6 and fend for yourself. Lenore?
No, not at all. First of all, I'm really sorry you grew up in that kind of environment because it sounds really rough. The idea of free range is not freewheeling, and it's certainly not abuse. It's the idea that we do what, you know, hopefully good parents have done throughout time, which is gradually train our children to be more responsible and give them their independence as they prove it. So if you teach your child to cross the street safely and you've watched him do it and you know that he's competent, then you let him start crossing the street, you know, your own block, and then maybe a couple blocks further. And you do the same with riding a bike. You do the same with letting them babysit. It's a gradual process, and it doesn't have anything to do with neglect. It has to do with teaching.
Well, and I think that it's almost a sign of an involved parent who actually wants to nurture those skills. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's probably much easier to just leave your kid in the basement playing video games and not ever let them do anything than to have them come up in the kitchen and actually help you out with the sharp knife. Right, you know, or learn how to sharpen a knife or actually enable them to do some of the things you're talking about. I think about, Lenore, when you let your 9-year-old take the subway, you were not just off in some crack house, you know, spacing out while he did that. You were, like, standing by. You were right there at the place where he was going to wind up. I mean, you were paying full and complete 100% attention to that.
On the floor with him and looked at the map and made sure he knew how to read the map and gave him quarters for the phone and gave him $20 in case, God forbid, something happened and he needed to hop in a cab. And had been on the subway umpteen times with him before, and we knew our kid.
I think it's really, if I could just sum it up, I think it's a different form of involved parenting that's more about establishing independence than dependence. All right, stay tuned. We'll be right back for the final segment right after this.
ProPure is introducing Pro One. All of your filtration in one system, portable, on the go. This is the Pro One by ProPure. You wanted it, you got it. No more do you have 2 or 3 filters to just reduce sodium fluoride. You have a system that cuts out the sodium fluoride and up to 95% of hydrofluorosilicic acid. Advanced manufacturing technology combines silver-impregnated white ceramic with new Aquamedics advanced media for removal of fluoride and other heavy metals, all in one filter element. It cuts out the acid derivative of fluoride. It is the only one that does it, and out of the gates, we have it discounted at 10% off with promo code WATER. This is the only system that in one unit helps reduce or remove pesticides, herbicides, chloramines, ammonia, and chlorine, hydrofluorosilicic acid, the most common form of fluoride not covered by other fluoride filter brands, and sodium hexafluorosilicate. This is a revolution against the tyrants. They love putting the toxic acid base of fluoride into your water. They love the fact that it's an adjuvant supercharging the trace Prozac in the water and the hormones and the other chemicals. By cutting out fluoride, you cut out the turbocharger in all the poison being artificially introduced into your body. This is what I use. It's a win-win. You get a high-quality product at the lowest price. You support the InfoWar. Get your ProPure with the new Pro One filter today at InfoWarsStore.com or by calling 888-253-3139.
Final segment here. Catherine Albrecht filling in for Alex Jones as he gets some much-deserved rest. We need him tan, rested, and ready to continue to lead the revolution across this country.
Want to know what's going on? Want to get the inside scoop? Minutemen Radio, the Mark Fluid broadcast, will give you the stories that corporate media mongers will not tell you. Want the truth? Then go to fluidnews.webs.com. That's fluidnews.webs.com.
Final segment here, Catherine Albrecht filling in for Alex Jones as he gets some much-deserved rest. We need him tan, rested, and ready to continue to lead the revolution across this country against the New World Order. We all know what's coming. We all do. We all feel it in our bones, whether you want to call it a spiritual or a political or an economic battle. We all feel it coming. And I, for one, have my hat off to Alex Jones. I want to say thank you for all that he does. Also want to say thank you to all the listeners for all the support. I've gotten lots of lovely emails in from you guys this hour. I am going to be with you again tomorrow and also on Friday. Got a whole lineup of fabulous guests, and of course I'll be giving you the updates from my corner of the battle, where I work on the issue of RFID tracking, consumer privacy, and also going to be reporting in on what's going on down there in San Antonio, where they've got 4,200 kids wearing remotely readable RFID tracking beacons around their necks. See, that's really where this goes. Lenore Skenazy is my guest this hour. Lenore, let me ask you about this program down in Texas, because taken to its logical conclusion, this idea that kids are not competent, that they're not allowed to go anywhere or be anywhere. I just spent a week down in San Antonio, Texas, talking to the vendor of this program, where they've got these remotely readable tracking devices around kids' necks. Every 25 seconds, they believe that these kids are at such risk on campus that they need to pinpoint their precise location, store it in a giant database, and know where these kids are literally every 25 seconds all day long. That's twice a minute. And yeah, well, here's the part that really gets me is, as I was talking to Mike Wade, the vendor of this program at Wade Garcia, he actually said that one of the administrators at one of the schools says he can't sleep at night because after the kids leave the bus stop, after they get off the bus, then he can't track them all the way home and throughout their evening and for the entire rest of their lives. So he says he literally is losing sleep, quote unquote, because he cannot track the kids in his school after they leave school.
It's so interesting because what I talk about a lot is that all these new devices that are supposed to give us peace of mind, from the cell phone to GPSing our kids to RFID tags, actually do the exact opposite. Because in the olden days, when I didn't immediately come home from school, my mom figured I'd stopped at a friend's house, or maybe I went to get a candy bar, or I was playing in the park, or whatever, and she didn't immediately freak out. But nowadays, if you can't get your kid on the phone immediately, if you send a text and they're not there, or if you're GPSing them and their battery runs out and you don't know where they are, the immediate idea is that, oh my God, they're in terrible danger, because that's what we've been trained to think. The second that we're not in touch, either physically or electronically, with our kids, we're supposed to imagine the very worst. And there are TV commercials and radio commercials that go on and on about, like, imagine if your child wasn't with you. Don't you have to know all the time, or they could be in terrible danger? And when you're taught to act like that, you start thinking that you can't let your children out of your eyes or out of your electronic eyes ever. And it drives you crazy, and it trains the child that they're a prisoner. It's like the those ankle bracelets that guys on parole wear. I mean, somehow we're supposed to be tracking them all the time. What happened to their freedom?
Well, and they're going to grow up expecting that. They're going to feel unsafe unless they're being tracked, and they're going to be begging the government for the tracking device. All right,
or
James.
Simply taking it for granted.
That music means we're done here. Lenore Skenazy, I want to thank you so much for joining me. FreeRangeKids.com. All right, and apologies to the callers I didn't get to, but I will be back, and we'll do it all again tomorrow. Catherine Albrecht filling in for Alex Jones. God bless. Bye-bye.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.
Now you can get good quality made gifts from true veterans. No more will you have to keep shelling out your money to the fat corporate mongers that all they do is can keep you down. The globalists want you to spend all your hard-earned money, but why would you when you can go to the top Patriot stores around, and one of them are RFIDShopWorld.webs.com, a complete line of military local gifts designed by 100% American. Stop catering to the globalists and stop catering to a crisis. Make a difference today. Go to RFIDShopWorld.webs.com. I really hope you did enjoy the show. I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Remember, tomorrow night we'll be on at 7:30. Or 7 o'clock, rather, I'm sorry. We're a little late broadcasting tonight. We had some technical difficulties with some of the stories, but we got them up to you, and we got it to you. Remember, this broadcast is only going to say the truth. It's only going to say what's going on, and I'm telling you right now, this is the broadcast that you want to hear, because we're coming into you, and we will keep you advised of everything that's going on as far as our freedoms, what we have to do, and what's going on. We look forward to hearing you, seeing you listen to us tomorrow night. And take care of yourselves. God bless you all.